told this year quietly, insistently, or with thinly veiled contempt that you need to be a little bit meaner to men, then this video slash autopsy slash conversation might just be for you. And if you're a man trying to navigate a social terrain, you know, increasingly populated by women who are strategically opaque, cold, withholding, then yeah, this video also might be for you. If you're neither though, and you've sensed that something has definitely shifted, you know, something subtle but corrosive in the way mystery, access, and warmth is negotiated between the sexes, then of course I welcome you here because we might be able to learn something together. So without further ado, I'm so grateful to have you here or to have you back. Let's begin.
There's no such thing as being too mean to a man. If you think you're being mean, you probably could be meaner. Men are not nice people. They're not innately nice. They're not running around trying to see how they can be nice to other people. And if they're around you or if they're doing something, it is because they are benefiting from it. They always put themselves first. So you need to be being mean to get out of that what you want out of that. Like, it needs to be your world. And I think men absolutely adore mean women because in their mind, you are a challenge. And if you're mean to them, you're mean to other men. So you're not out here being overly nice to men. Men don't respect nice women. Like, they walk all over it. And this is not just for men that you are romantically involved with. This is any man that's in your life. There is no reason for you to be trying to be nice to him. Your siblings, your family members, your co-workers, your bosses. Ain't no reason for you to be out here trying to be nice to men. It gets you absolutely nowhere.
I don't care what anyone says. Guys love it when you treat them like shit. Just treat him like shit. He's gonna love you. Be really mean to him. He's gonna love you. This is just science and straight facts.
So I'm going to say this very, very early. I really don't like my personality being policed. I don't respond well to it. I don't appreciate it. I don't like people trying to change who I am. And I feel like a lot of people, men and women, can relate to that feeling, can relate to that offense. Nobody likes to be told how to be, how to act, and what to do.
Dark feminine energy is the key to becoming magnetic to men. And here are 5 very simple ways to integrate that energy into your everyday life.
I've also never had to be mean to get what I want, whatever that means, from men. I've never had to be imposing. I've never had to be seductive. Firstly, I'm very aware of the way that I present. You know, guys, I am just not scary. I'm not imposing, and I'm not naturally inclined to be seductive either. And even if I were, I personally don't see the value of flirting with someone in order to disarm them. I found that genuine interest, right? Real curiosity towards who you are as a person is disarming enough. And crucially, it allows me to remain myself. And what I've also learned to appreciate, especially so if you are a person who is naturally agreeable in temperament, is that warmth is extraordinarily powerful. It lowers defenses, it invites disclosure, and it really has this incredible way of bringing the latent aspects of a person's essence to the surface. But when warmth is indiscriminate, right, when it is unbounded, when it is unfiltered, or when it is extended without discernment, it becomes dangerous. And not necessarily because it is wrong, but because it necessarily produces affects. And this precisely is where I want to anchor us for this video, because this is where the conspiracy begins. There is, in my opinion, a strange like multi-front campaign against feminine warmth. If you are a Christian like I am, or if you've grown up in intense faith-related circles, you have been warned against the fact that feminine warmth can be an invitation to sin. If you've read the works of Robert Greene, and hopefully we can autopsy him in later videos, you've encountered theories of seduction that essentially just prioritize mystery, strategic withdrawal, and restricted access as a way to secure investment.
Mystery is something that people miss in life. I think they miss fantasy and enchantment, but also like some drama. Everything is so familiar and banal and predictable. There's no theater. And so think of seduction or courtship as kind of like 2 birds going through a mating dance, and they're courting each other. And it's this elaborate, beautiful dance that happens all the time in nature. Well, we're doing the same thing. It's a little bit more psychological with us. It's not completely physiological, but we're creating this little kind of interesting dance. And people want theater in their life. They want to be taken out of their humdrum, boring, day-to-day existence. And falling in love or having a love affair is sometimes the most dramatic thing that can happen to you. You're not just being manipulative. You're actually entertaining people and giving them what what they want most desperately because you don't get it in real life. All our fantasizing in our culture is in television, is in imagery, is out there, and we're not experiencing it. We have a deficit of experiencing these things in our own lives. We live vicariously through all these programs, etc., but we want to experience it ourselves. The lack of seduction going on is actually problematic to me because it's like people who are missing a sort of enchanting fantasy process in life and you're not giving it to them. So never feel guilty about the fact that you're creating that distance thing because you're actually entertaining people. You're actually giving them what they secretly want.
And increasingly we see that women are being told to be sharper, to be crueler, to be meaner to men in order to essentially make more scarce the immature or abusive behavior from men that we don't want to see.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but be mean to men. Be mean to them. I was nice to them for far too long, for most of my life. And I kid you not, I got the most loved. I felt the most loved when I started being mean to them. I don't know the science behind it. It just turns them on for real. It makes their coochie juice. They just like a mean ass bitch. But you don't be mean all the fucking time, but don't get afraid to get smart. You can't be afraid of how he gonna react or what he gonna think. Like, that's when they like you more because you're gonna say whatever you feeling. You're not gonna sugarcoat it. Men don't like people pleasers. They like the ones that can stand their ground. Being with a people pleaser isn't fun. Where's the polarity? The whole point of life is to have that up and down, that hot and cold. So, you don't be nice all the time. I remember one time I cut this guy off because he wasn't making time for me and I was like, fuck this. So he's like blowing up my phone after I cut things off. And he's like, oh, I even got a personal assistant because of you. I want to make more time for you. And I told him like, fuck you and your assistant. Why would I say that? Because you're just not supposed to give a fuck about what they thinking.
It is a contemptuous strategy of recompense, and we've discussed this theory, this principle in previous videos. But yes, this is essentially what we are seeing, especially going into the new year, into 2026. The implication though is more than clear. Warmth is naive, warmth is dangerous, warmth must be disciplined, weaponized, or withdrawn. But this strategy, you guys, is not modern, nor is it merely ancient. It appears in military doctrine, it appears in intelligence operations, it appears in political subterfuge, in myth, in scripture, in courtly ritual, which raises a question that nobody seems to want to ask directly. Is feminine withdrawal really a form of wisdom, or has it just devolved into socially sanctioned cruelty? That is the subject of today's video. That is the subject of today's autopsy / conversation, because it's a little bit more informal. I do want your thoughts, I do want your opinions, and it is something that I am deciding to call the Cruel Maiden Conspiracy. Not to condemn warmth, not to romanticize coldness, but rather, I think, to understand what happens when mystery, when coldness, when access, when affection loses its proper order. So, without further ado, let's keep going. All right, so starting us off, to first and foremost understand the behavioral architecture behind withdrawal, pursuit, and desire, we must first acknowledge that human attachment and reward systems are first and foremost neural systems shaped by evolutionary pressures, right? Not necessarily moral imperatives. And this is really this is crucial, you guys, to understand. Psychology, we appreciate, does not adjudicate virtue, it maps function. And it is brutally indifferent to morality. It does not care whether a behavior is ethical, kind, or spiritually healthy. It only tells us whether or not a behavior reliably produces attachment, pursuit, or submission. And this is exactly where the conversation becomes sensitive, inflammatory, and controversial, because many of the behaviors that women are being encouraged to adopt are not new, are not accidental, and the scary thing is that they are not ineffective. They are actually empirically legible, and I'll show that to you. And basically what I'm saying is we need to actually ask whether or not these strategies work. I mean, one of the most robust findings in behavioral psychology is that unpredictable reward actually strengthens attachment more reliably, more securely than consistent reward. So what does this mean? Well, when reinforcement is intermittent, right? This is, warmth today, withdrawal tomorrow, this is your hot and cold type of person, the nervous system becomes vigilant, and animals and humans alike show greater persistence under unpredictable schedules, higher resistance to extinction than under predictable reward patterns, and neural signatures consistent with habit formation. This is precisely why systems like gambling, for example, are more addictive than fixed payout machines. You see, what's happening is that the uncertainty itself generates anticipatory arousal, and by default installs persistence. Neuroscientists describe this as a reward prediction signal. So the brain actually fires dopaminergic bursts when an unexpected positive outcome occurs. And this obviously will then reinforce the behavior that preceded it. In relational dynamics, this plays out as a warm response in one moment, a cool response the next, and essentially reward not denied, but delayed. This, you guys, is the skeleton of psychological attachment reinforcement. So moving on to attachment theory, we appreciate that this is rooted in the work of John Bowlby and I think her name is, yes, Mary Ainsworth. It describes consistent neurobehavioral patterns that have been observed in human beings and in animals for centuries, observed across cultures and verified through brain studies. Functional neuroimaging shows that people with avoidant attachment, right, those are people who, you know, habitually withdraw or suppress closeness, these individuals do in fact display distinct neural responses compared to securely attached individuals. Their brains actually register less reactivity in reward and distress circuits when confronted with social inclusion or exclusion, indicating, at least to me, a learned devaluation of social reward and obviously a greater capacity to emotionally detach. Conversely, those with anxious attachment show heightened activity in regions of the brain associated, you know, with pain and distress when facing things like trauma, social rejection, and this all reflects an intense yet unstable reliance on external validation. We know, we know these types of people. And we need to appreciate that these patterns are not simply personality quirks. It's really important that we understand them because these map out who we are.
Avoidance will spend the majority of their lives alone, not because they want to be, but because they're terrified to stay. And that's the thing about avoidance. They don't fear love. They fear what love requires, which is closeness, vulnerability, and the risk of being truly seen. And that's terrifying when your deepest belief is, if I let you get too close, you'll hurt me. So they do what they know best. They create distance. They'll ghost you, not because they don't care, but because caring feels unsafe. They'll push you away, not because they don't want to lose you, but because keeping you hurts more. And they'll say things like, I'm just not ready for a relationship, but the truth is they're not ready to be known. Because to an avoidant, intimacy feels like entrapment, and the closer you get, the more they want to run, not from you, but from the fear of losing themselves. But the most tragic part of all, they actually crave connection deeply. They want love badly, but they'll sabotage it instinctively. Because in their world, distance equals safety, and closeness, well, closeness feels like a threat. So they leave before they can be left, and they withdraw before they can be hurt, and they isolate before anyone can abandon them. But in doing so, they end up living the very life they fear the most. Alone. Because no matter how hard you run from intimacy, the truth is distance won't protect you from heartbreak. It will only guarantee that you never experience love at all.
They explicitly reflect a neural adaptation to early relational environments. You know, environments where consistency was inconsistent, threatening, or absent completely. Dopamine neurons in regions such as the ventral tegmental area encode reward prediction areas. This is essentially the difference between expected and actual reward. Because see, when a reward is predictable, dopamine firing increases not only for the actual reward, but for the cues that predict it. And so over time, these cues themselves become rewarding. Psychologically, this means delayed access can increase perceived value. It implies that uncertainty amplifies attention and cognitive silence. And it shows us that variable warmth can engender a neurobiological craving. So, okay, what does this mean for us? Importantly, this pattern parallels behavioral enforcement mechanisms in attachment systems and reward learning models, such that the anticipation becomes more neurobiologically rewarding and energizing than the reward itself. This precisely is what we call the thrill of the chase.
Because you're pretty and you're smart and you're ignoring me, so you're obviously my type.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Perfect.
Robert Greene's Art of Seduction. This was published in 2001, and I know a lot of you guys are familiar with this book, but essentially, I notice how it is often dismissed as pickup artistry or cultural folklore, when actually, in my opinion, it maps patterns of strategic social interaction that exploit these very neurobiological tendencies that frame the way we familiarize or withdraw from one another as, you know, men and women. Greene profiles archetypes like, for example, the coquette, alternating warmth and coolness, as we discussed earlier, to sustained pursuit. Then we have the siren. She is emotional attunement without sustained commitment.
Coquette, probably the most dangerous. That's the one I have problems with the most because of my past. Most men have had that. You know, the coquette, the woman or man, because that can go both ways, is someone who blows hot and cold. Right? They know how to play hard to get, and they just get your claws in you, and then they withdraw, and you go crazy, and you have to pursue them, and you're going after them. Coquettes are devilishly powerful. You know, it's for a man, they could be the worst. And I've had many experiences with that. the siren, which is only of women. Only women can be sirens. That's sort of what I consider the icon of seduction, is the siren itself, because that's where the concept came from. And that's a woman who has a very powerful sexual energy that any man can feel. It's not overt in that they're not coming on to you, but they just radiate this kind of intense physical energy. And there's an element almost of danger to them. And that's sort of what excites the man about the siren. And if I get involved with, and she doesn't have to be beautiful. So the greatest siren who ever lived was Cleopatra. And from what we know about Cleopatra, she had a bit of a long nose and a thin face. She wasn't like strikingly beautiful. It was her personality. So it's not about looks. It's about this energy you have and this confidence. And there's almost a sense if I get involved with this woman, she might destroy me. She might ruin my reputation. She might, take me somewhere I don't want to go. But that's what's so exciting about the siren.
And then obviously the crush. This is intense early engagement followed by deliberate absence. And just note, this is not an exhaustive list. These are not invented behaviors. These are observed personality expressions that people have been observing for millennia. They're essentially catalogs of recurrent human strategies that resonate precisely because they interface with pre-existing psychological mechanisms: intermittent reinforcement, reward prediction error, and attachment modulation. But you see, here is the critical distinction. Greene did not empirically derive these patterns. He historicized them. He described them, but he didn't necessarily measure them. And what I find particularly concerning about those, and don't get me wrong, I'm a reader. I've read all of Greene's books, but what I find concerning particularly about men who overindulge Greene's works is that they assume that Greene has cataloged the full range of female personality expression. He hasn't. Just as I do not relate to men consistently through these patterns, many women don't either. And I find that men and women who consistently relate or at least familiarize themselves with the opposite gender by engaging with abstractions in books, games, movies, anime, whatever it happens to be, rather than through embodied, real life interactions, suffer from the same distortion. You begin to see categories instead of people, and these categories become viral inevitably. The single 40-year-old mother, the 29-year-old female virgin. Like, why? How is she a virgin? The pregnant 19-year-old, the guy who is 25 and never has had a girlfriend. These are the you see, these archetypes begin to develop within the online social corpus. And from these labels, you infer temperament, destiny, and pathology. Women do this to men too, through different metrics, but inevitably through the same era. What I find often dissolves these assumptions is genuine warmth paired with curiosity, because when somebody invites you into their story, when somebody expresses themselves genuinely, authentically to you, you begin to know them beyond some superficially defined characteristic. And even if those predictions are accurate, they should not become verdicts of who a person is, of a person's true essence. You know what I'm saying? One red flag response or green flag action does not define and describe a person's entire temperament, and you should not let it, especially if a person has tried to categorize you. And if, say, you do have some bad characteristic or red flag, I think that somebody's capacity to be indiscriminate with you, to give you the benefit of the doubt either way, should inform better habits, better decision making out of you. But, I know that I've been told that this is terribly hopeful. It is not, unfortunately, always the case that someone will respond with their best characteristics to your warmth. And unfortunately, I have learned that the hard way. I've come to learn that there are actually several categories of warmth. And warmth, just because it isn't explicitly manipulative, manipulative, isn't good simply because it is authentic. This truly is a tough pill to swallow. Warmth, trust, earnestness, well-meaningness, any sexuality, any authentic characteristic that some person might express isn't inherently good simply because it is authentic. It is not rewarded in this world simply for the quality of its authenticity. And to assume otherwise, and I'm saying this bluntly, would make you detrimentally naive. Naivety curdles into resentment when reality fails to reciprocate, right? This is how the nice guy becomes bitter. This is how the nice girl becomes wounded. A man, unfortunately, will not refrain from hurting you simply because you were kind, simply because you gave him more time of day than the girl he actually wanted, but was consistently mean to him. Goodness. I'm not talking about anyone explicit, but you know what I'm talking about. And it goes all the way back around. You know, a woman will not commit to you as a guy simply because you were nice to her, simply because you cared genuinely. Warmth can expose you not merely as authentic, but also vulnerable. In the book of Proverbs, the strange woman exemplifies inauthentic warmth, right? Disingenuous warmth. The kind of warmth that a lot of men are warned against as an example of, you know, feminine villainy. And she's not explicitly condemned for her sexuality, rather she is condemned for her strategy. She flatters to attract, she invites to entrap you. She seeks inheritance, reputation, and leverage. Her warmth is instrumental, it is means oriented, and it has an objective beyond the mere relationship. And yes, indeed, there are people who operate that way, but not all women are that way. The cruel maiden, i.e. the ice queen, operates through the opposite distortion, right? She withholds affection. She withholds affection and care for you as leverage. She moralizes distance. She tests endlessly. And she confuses discernment with disdain. Usually because she has to, and usually because she made a mistake in the past and she's paid the cost for not being scrutinizing, especially when it comes to men. She does not protect herself from men, you know, she trains men to bleed quietly. You know, her coldness isn't necessarily wisdom, it's actually a form of control. And this is where the uncomfortable reality really sets in. The fact that authentic warmth, curiosity, and compassion are neither guaranteed safety nets nor reliability signals. Warmth does not automatically produce secure attachment within a person. Warmth interacts with pre-existing neural histories, reward histories, and attachment systems. And these are all embedded, you know, vulnerably within a human being. That's why I think it's so important to learn how to engage with people, really, like on a human level, because then they will divulge to you their story. And if you really care about someone, you know, you'll care enough to know their story. You'll care enough, especially when you love someone, you'll care enough to master them. That's true reciprocation, I think. Two individuals receiving the same warmth can come away with completely different internal narratives. And I've experienced this in real time. One feels cherished and safe, and I'm so sorry for the rain, you guys, but yeah, one feels cherished and safe and happy to be in your company, and another person might come out overwhelmed, confused, and they might spite you actually for the way you've treated them. Even if you've treated them with absolute grace and kindness, there's still something, there's some internal narrative going on behind the scenes that you'll probably never know anything about. And this is where I have to implicate myself, you guys. I struggle a lot to police my warmth. I've been told many times that I need to be a little bit more mean. I need to be a little bit, you know, a little bit less nice, especially so to men. But yeah, that's why I wanted to make this video and why I wanted to have this discussion. As a woman, there is nothing wrong with limiting people's relational access to you, especially because you need to appreciate that you can't be there for everyone at all times, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not even talking about this in a romantic sense. I'm talking purely platonically. What I've learned is simple yet sobering. Warmth always brings something out of a person. But what it brings out depends on their maturity. This is not exclusive to men necessarily. It is human, but with men, warmth is often interpreted as access, kindness as availability, you know, curiosity as invitation. And whilst as women, it's seldom ever our intention. Just because we're nice, it doesn't necessarily mean we want anything more from you than honestly just genuine respect. I think we haven't been discriminating enough with our affections, with our warmth, with our availability to clarify when it is our intention, when we are actually indicating interest. We haven't set up those boundaries, and it's our responsibility to change that. You don't have to become cruel. You don't have to become patronizing towards other men. And if you feel the need to act that way, I think that there is obviously something you hurt, wounded within you that you need to work on. But discriminating access whilst maintaining consistent kindness to everyone around you is not meanness. Okay, I think especially if you have some exclusivity in your life, it's actually stewardship. It's actually again, especially so if you're in a relationship, it's actually respect for the person you're in a relationship with. If you're naturally agreeable, you don't have to compromise your entire personality, but you don't also have to be universally accessible. And I'm talking about this on a relational level, right? You don't have to go above and beyond for everyone who crosses your path. It is a hard line to walk for everyone, but I think it is a necessary one. Whether you're a guy or you're a woman, really, not everyone deserves everything from you. Some people, as unfair as it may seem, are entitled to less, but everyone, every human being is entitled to respect and to kindness.